attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Great Garment Graphics webinar presented by Transfer Express. My name is Andy Curtis. I am the training coordinator here at Transfer Express, and it is a pleasure to talk to you today. If you've joined me before, then thank you so much for coming back. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. I enjoy our once-a-month conversations. If you're new, then welcome, and it's going to be a fun 45 minutes to hour, depending on how long we go here. As always, folks, I encourage every and any question you can possibly come up with. The lady behind the curtain is Jody Weiler from Great Garment Graphics. Hey, Jody, how you doing?
Great, Andy. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks everyone out in the audience for joining us today as well.
If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask in the message box. Jody's going to sort of keep track of those, and if I don't ramble for too long, we'll do a question and answer period at the end. If I do ramble a little too much, then instead of doing live Q&A, you'll get a response via email for any question you ask. So we love the interaction, so please feel free to ask away. In the meantime, we usually start these webinars off with some poll questions. The topic today is creating art for screen-printed transfers. Now, this is always a fun topic because there's usually a lot of questions, but Jody, if you'd run that first poll for us.
Yep, it's launched. Our first poll question is, what program do you use to create your art?
This is always a fun one. I think that there could probably be wars fought over this question. The Corel Draw versus everybody else, or Corel versus Adobe, or what have you. So different worlds for sure. So it's good to get a baseline. Here at Transfer Express, we use Corel Draw, just so everyone knows. Just so we have a line of reference here.
Okay, it looks like just about everybody's voted, so I'm going to close the poll. So we do have 26% that are new, so it would seem that they're probably not using a specific program. 32% for Corel Draw, 16% with Adobe, 21% with Photoshop, and a small smattering using Microsoft Word.
All right. Okay, cool. We've got one more question that will pertain to today's webinar, too, and this is going to be a useful one for me for reference.
So, and I guess what I would be curious about is, I wonder if most of those 25% that are new are actually outsourcing their art, or if they have an artist on staff.
That's a good question, Jody. I would imagine that too. We all know that graphic designers make good money, and they're expensive to keep. So outsourcing is definitely something that does happen a lot. So it's good for us to know who creates your art.
So almost half actually are artists, and then about 18% have an artist on staff, and 36%, Andy, are outsourcing art.
That's about what I imagine, actually. That's more artists than I thought, though, so that's good. Okay, so we have an artsy crowd. I'm glad, because that's sort of the point of today's webinar, is creating art for screen-printed transfers. So good to know we've got some artists out there. Well, thank you, Jody, for the poll. So we're going to move forward here. Now, I figure if we're going to talk about creating art for screen-printed transfers, the very first thing we should probably talk about is what is a screen-printed transfer. Now, we won't spend half an hour on this topic, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. A screen-printed transfer is when Plastisol ink is printed onto a special kind of release paper, and then the whole thing needs to be applied with a heat press. So basically a screen printed transfer, for all intents and purposes, folks, is we're screen printing. We're screen printing just like you all might if you're screen printers yourselves, or if you outsource your screen printing to a local shop, whatever you might be doing. We're doing the same thing. The only difference is our ink, instead of being printed directly onto the garment, is being printed onto a piece of release paper. The the release paper is then has a adhesive applied to it that then is applied with a heat press. So if you want to look at it like this, a screen printed transfer is just taking a temporary detour onto a piece of paper. And then when you apply the transfer with the heat press, you're finishing the curing process, you're finishing the adhesion process, and that's that. So in the end, you've got a plastisol decoration on a shirt that's just like the screen printer would have done if it had been done directly on the garment. So we just want to make sure that everyone's clear on that. We're not talking about some kind of crazy alien process. It's the same screen printing, the same plastisol inks. The only difference is it's taking a detour onto a piece of paper. So so screen printed transfers are screen printing, just so we can be clear about that. So this means, for reference then, this means that the artwork that you make for screen printing, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much the same as the art that would be done for screen printed transfers. Now as we talk today, you'll see there's a couple little tweaks and a couple little subtle differences, but nothing crazy. So the very first question, of course, is always, what program should I use? So let's start with that. Now, at Transfer Express, we use CorelDRAW. We do also accept Illustrator files. So for those of you using Adobe Illustrator, that works totally fine. In terms of vector artwork, if you're looking to make vector artwork, use vector artwork, interact with vector artwork, CorelDRAW and Illustrator are the two that we recommend. That being said, we accept files of every shape, form, and flavor you could possibly imagine. When it comes right down to it, there is a far shorter list of file types we don't accept. So when it comes down to it, when you're looking to send us artwork, when you're looking to do the artwork yourself and then send it over to us, if you have it in a bitmap or a GIF or a TIFF, if you have any of those kind of files, PSD, PNGs, we'll totally take them, not a problem. We prefer CDR and AI files, but that's just preference sake. Keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to send us those types of files. That's just what we would prefer to get from you. So, so CorelDRAW, Illustrator, those are the two programs we recommend. And based on our polls, it sounds like the vast majority of everyone is interacting with those anyway. So we're good there. Now, if you're just looking to send us artwork that your customer has sent to you, then it's not something you necessarily need to be able to open. Let's say your customer has an AI file, but you don't have Adobe Illustrator on your computer. It's not a problem. You don't necessarily have to be able to open the file yourself. It would help for reference sake, but if you just take that AI file and upload it to us, and we'll talk about uploading here in a moment, if you just take that AI file and upload it to us, that works just fine. So that being said, we accept a whole laundry list of file types, and these are just a couple of them. All right, so regardless of whether you're using Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, the question becomes, is your artwork vector or is it raster? Now, I am from the class of people, I don't like using the word raster. I prefer the word bitmap. In the end, raster and bitmap are essentially the same things. The two flavors of artwork we're talking about here are vector versus raster or bitmap. So creating vector artwork, this is what everybody prefers. Here's the big secret. If you look at the two eagles on my screen here, on the left we have the eagle, same eagle mind you, that eagle is made from vector artwork. On the right, the eagle is made from raster or bitmap artwork. Now, you don't notice a difference when it's all zoomed out, but when you start to get all up close to the eagles, that's when you see the difference. The eagle on the left, no matter how close we zoom into that eagle's beak, we see clean lines. Vector artwork is made up of lines. It's mathematical equations creating curves in those lines. It's basically perfect artwork. You can zoom in as close as you want, and it's always going to be a line. Now the difference is on the right-hand side there, the bitmap or the raster, that artwork is made up of a series of pixels. Pixels are little squares basically. So a bitmap is coloring a whole bunch of tiny squares. Now if you look at that zoom in on the eagle's beak on the right-hand side there, you see how some of the pixels are light gray and dark gray and medium gray and black. Because that's how those pixels work. Those pixels are giving the illusion of a line. It's not really a line, it's a series of pixels. So the problem here is The artwork on the left, the vector artwork, can be interacted with. It can be moved around. It can be changed. If you wanted to change the outline of that eagle's head to blue, let's say, it would be easy to do with the vector art on the left because you'd simply grab the eagle head, click blue on your color palette, and you're done. But on the right, it would get messy because those pixels, those don't change color real easy. You could change all the black pixels to blue, but then all the gray pixels, you'd have to get in there and individually manipulate those pixels. So the point that we're making here, the point that I'm trying to get to you folks, is that vector artwork is definitely preferred. Vector artwork can be interacted with, it can be resized. So imagine if we took these eagle heads and blew both of them up really big. The vector artwork on the left would turn out just fine because the artwork is made up of lines. Those lines can shrink and expand without a problem. Those pixels on the right-hand side there, those pixels, they don't blow up real good. As you can see with the magnifying glass there, they don't blow up real well. All they are just tiny little squares. And the bigger you make the artwork, the more you see those tiny little squares when those squares get bigger and bigger and bigger. So on the right there, that's not the type of artwork that can be easily resized, at least without a loss in the quality of your artwork. Vector artwork, again, isn't made up of pixels, it's made up of lines. Now, this brings up a piece of terminology that we oftentimes use here at Transfer Express. You may have heard pixelation. Pixelation is when you've blown up a bitmap or a raster piece of artwork, and when you blow it up, you start to see the individual pixels. Suddenly, that eagle's beak doesn't really look curved, it starts to look jagged because you can see the individual little pixels. That's pixelation. You might have experienced pixelation, for example, when a customer of yours, maybe they take a picture with a cell phone. Cell phone photography is getting better and better these days, gosh knows, but still, cell phone pictures really aren't usually the best. So they send you a cell phone picture of somebody they want to make a shirt out of, and unfortunately, when we blow up that picture, because the cell phone picture is low quality, and it is a bitmap, photos like that are always in bitmap raster format, when we blow it up, the person's picture turns pixelated. There's not much that can be done about that. So vector artwork is always preferred whenever physically possible to have vector art. You might have heard vector art called line art. Having line art, vector art is definitely what is preferred. It is definitely the way to go. Now, that being said, folks, I don't want to scare anybody away in that I have to have vector artwork or I can't do business. It doesn't work that way. If you have bitmap artwork, we can certainly work with it. Bear in mind that complicated bitmap artwork might necessitate a art charge. Those are usually few and far between. Art charges at Transfer Express here are $20 for every additional half hour of art time that is needed. You do get half an hour of art time for free, so for every additional half hour it is $20. Now, again, those are few and far between. Those are not nearly every or only a few per day generally, so don't go into it assuming, but it is definitely a possibility. So now, beyond just having vector artwork, there is another bit of terminology when you're creating vector artwork that you might have heard of, converting to curves. Here's the concept. You have a selection of fonts on your computer. Fonts meaning type style or letter style. They all mean the same thing. Type style, letter style, font. It's all the same thing. So you might have a collection of fonts on your computer that you have downloaded and that you've gotten from your software packages. Maybe the fonts came with Corel when you bought Corel. Maybe you had some fonts that you downloaded off the internet. You have your own font collection on your computer. Well, we have our own font collections on our computers as well. The problem is when you have a line of text that you have just typed out, like for example the word mentor there. That word mentor on the top left was just typed out using a font on that person's CorelDRAW, on that person's computer. So if that person uploads that piece of artwork to us here at Transfer Express, we have to have that same font. If we don't have that same font, the computers get confused. If that font, let's say that font is called 70s. If we don't have a font called 70s, our computer doesn't know what to choose, so it chooses something random. In this case, as you can see at the bottom there, a font that looks nothing like the one it should. Because again, we didn't have that font on our computer system. So it does what it's called defaulting. It defaults to a different font. So the solution here is to convert your font to curves. What this means is the computer doesn't change the font. The computer stops looking at your line of text as if it's a line of text, and the computer basically pretends that it's a piece of artwork. Okay? So when you convert your text to outlines or convert to curves, that's what you see at the top right there. Suddenly, instead of having a cursor and these sizing blocks around your piece of artwork, suddenly your line of text is made out of nodes. It's made out of little interactive dots. That text has been converted to curves. Now, when you send that text to us, the computer doesn't mess with it. The computer doesn't change it at all because that's not text anymore. It's a piece of artwork. So we see it exactly as it's meant to be seen. So it's very important that all the artwork that you send to us be converted to curves. Now, you'll notice that it's labeled curves/outlines. It's different terminology in the different computer programs. Those of you who are Corel users out there, you'll be familiar with convert to curves. That's what Corel calls it. For those of you using Adobe or Adobe products, instead of calling it converting to curves, it's called converting to outlines. Two different words that are just the same thing for two different pieces of software. So the next question is generally, okay, we understand it's important to convert to curves, but how do we do that? How do we go about converting to curves, converting to outlines? That's one of the most popular questions we get asked all the time. So let's go ahead and talk about that for just a second here. So starting with Corel, because Corel is what we have here at Transfer Express, again, the whole point is by converting to curves, you're telling the computer, hey, this isn't a line of text anymore. This is a piece of artwork. This is a shape that you should not mess with. So by converting to curves, we're ensuring that we see the artwork the way it's meant to be seen. So the idea is you select your line of text in CorelDRAW. You select your line of text, and you know it's selected because you see those little black squares, those little handle squares, the sizing boxes. You see them around the outside of the letters. So you know you've selected that line of text. Now, if you don't have any hotkeys set up in your CorelDRAW, you would go up to the Arrange menu. That's on your menu bar. It'll usually be a couple around Layout and Effects. You select Arrange, and then you simply click Convert to Curves. Now, in some versions of Corel, Convert to Curves is also a hotkey where you can select your line of text, and you can hit Control-Q. That will also work. My favorite way to convert to curves personally is I right-click on a line of text, and the pop-up menu that appears has Convert to Curves on it. So there's a couple different ways to go about that. The most basic way being to select your line of text, go to the Arrange menu, and click Convert to Curves. Now, I'm sure we have some people out there who are feverishly writing this down and trying to listen to me and write this all at the same time. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the webinar, if you do want a copy of this webinar, including all of these slides and this discussion, the webinar itself is being recorded, and you'll be able to download these slides at Great Garment Graphics afterwards. So don't stress out. Don't try and ignore me and write all at the same time. You can have all the information, I promise. So that's Corel. Let's talk about Adobe here next. So for Adobe, you're going to select your text. You're going to click the Type menu, and you're going to choose Create Outlines. Now, Adobe also has a hotkey set up for this. It's not the same as Corel. If you have Adobe Illustrator, then the hotkey is Shift-Control-O. Okay, so we have, again, convert to outlines, convert to curves. They both accomplish the same thing as far as we're concerned at Transfer Express. They both mean that we'll see the font the way you chose it, not our computer system getting confused and choosing something different. Okay? So converting to curves, converting to outlines, this is one of the most important things you can do because, again, this is what ensures that you get your artwork looking the way you want it to look. So definitely a must. All right, so we've talked about needing to do vector artwork and how important that is. We've talked about converting your text to curves when you've done that vector artwork. Now let's talk about line thicknesses. The idea here is that the screens we use at Transfer Express, the screens we use are real screens. That's just like a screen door screen. There's tiny little holes in this screen. And at some point, a line, like if you look at my screen here, I have a little butterfly down at the bottom left corner there. Some of the lines on your artwork, they can possibly get too small to even burn onto a screen because the holes in my mesh that we print on are only so big. So at some point, it is physically possible for artwork to get too small, for lines to be too thin to even burn onto a screen. At Transfer Express, our minimum line thickness is 0.012 inches, or if you're a points kind of person, you're working on the point scale, it's 0.864 points. For those of you not familiar, points are just another unit of measurement. Some artists prefer to use points, some prefer to use inches. So either way, 0.012 inches or 0.864 points. All right, this is the minimum thickness that something can be. If you have something that is under 0.012 inches thick, it cannot burn into a screen. All right, so at the bottom of my screen here, I've given you an example of the training tool that we actually use to train our customer service reps here at Transfer Express. On the left-hand side, we're looking at the butterfly. Now, that's a very tiny butterfly, and we know that all of the butterfly's lines, all of his outlines and all of his black areas, his antenna, the detail in his wings, they all have to be 0.012 inches thick. So how do we check that? How do we make sure that your artwork, that our artwork, is 0.012 inches thick? The trick is to make a rectangle. Now, whether you're using Adobe or Corel, it's usually very easy. There's usually a rectangle tool, draw tool. Draw yourself a rectangle. Make that rectangle 0.012 inches thick, or 0.864 inches thick. Now, once you've sized that rectangle to that size, you know that anything smaller than that rectangle you just made, anything smaller than it, will not print. So you can take that rectangle and move it around your file and compare it to the line thicknesses of your artwork. So in my bottom left-hand corner there, we've drawn a gray rectangle that's 0.012 inches thick, and we're comparing it to the butterfly's antenna. Now, I know on my screen it's probably a little bit small, you can't see it very well, but that butterfly's antenna is actually thinner than my gray line. It's thinner than my 0.012. So I would not be able to screen print that butterfly because his antennas, they wouldn't even burn into a screen. And then you start to think, well, okay, if his antennas are too small, his outlines of his wings are probably too small, and the tiny little dash marks inside the bottoms of his wings are probably too small. So that butterfly piece of artwork, we wouldn't be able to screen print him. We'd have to make him bigger. Or we could bold up his lines. It's possible to thicken up his antennas, thicken up his outlines. On the right-hand side, we're using that same logic, but comparing a line of text. Because again, everything has to be 0.012 inches thick, even lines of text. So we're comparing the word Compton. We've got two Comptons there. On top, we've got just a plain old block font, no serifs really, and on the bottom we've got a fancier Gaudi or Gatineau font that has serifs. So on the top we've drawn our gray line to be 0.012 inches thick, and we use it to sort of bring that line over the letter N in Compton, and we use it to see if that line of text is thick enough, and it is. The line of text is thicker than my gray reference line. So now the text on the bottom, we've done the same thing. We've made our gray reference line 0.012 inches thick, and we're comparing it to the thin part of the letter P in Compton. And lo and behold, that thin part of that letter P just doesn't barely cut it. So then you realize that, you know what, I bet you the thin parts of the letter O, those are probably too small. The thin parts of the letter M are probably too small. So that serif font there, that really wouldn't work. We could change the font to look like the one on the top there, or we could make that word bigger so that the letters thicken up and they would be able to hold. So the whole idea here is all of your printed areas, all of the lines, whether it's a line on a piece of text or a line on an object, all of your printed areas have to be 0.012 inches thick for them to burn onto a screen properly. So that's a printed area. Now let's talk about show-through areas. Now, this is another one of those fun little vocabulary words that I know all of us out there, we all probably have a different way of communicating this. At Transfer Express, we call it show-through, meaning it's an area that's not printing. Some customers call it knockout. Some customers call it garment strike-through. The whole point is a show-through area for us at Transfer Express. Show-through area is an area where there's no ink. Okay, so in our same butterfly that we were looking at before, all of those white areas on him, all those white areas are show-through. That's the garment showing through. Okay, so we need to look at our show-through areas. The minimum show-through thickness is 0.04 inches, or again, if you're a points person, it's 2.88 points. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to make a gray reference line. We're going to make a rectangle, make a line, and we're going to make this line 0.04 inches thick. Then we're going to move that line all over our piece of artwork, and we know that if something is smaller than that line, the show-through area is too small. So now the question that we get asked is, okay, wait a minute, why is show-through important? We understand why the printing area is important, but why is show-through important? When you're making a transfer, think about what happens when you press that transfer. When you have a transfer in your hands, you put it onto your heat press and you press that transfer. It's being heated up to quite a temperature, 360 degrees or more. When you heat up ink to that temperature, the ink wants to expand. Suddenly we're back to high school physics class. When you heat up ink, the ink wants to expand. Our experience at Transfer Express is that if your show-through area is smaller than 0.04 inches thick, that the ink will close up that show-through area. The ink expands and closes up on itself. Now keep in mind, this is not an exact science. That doesn't mean that if something is just a tiny bit under 0.04 that it's going to close up completely. Sometimes it closes up, sometimes it doesn't. The point is, if it's lower than 0.04, it doesn't behave predictably. So that's why we set our minimum at 0.04 inches. If you make your show-through area that size or bigger, we know that it will print just fine. So we look at our butterfly down there at the bottom left again, and now instead of looking at his black lines, now we're looking at the butterfly's show-through areas. The white is the show-through, and we're looking at some of his little, some of the little dash marks on the bottom part of his wings there, and we can see that our gray guideline is bigger than his show-through area. So his show-through area is smaller than 0.04. That's not going to work. When we print that transfer, that area is probably going to close up. Now keep in mind what can happen here is we might be able to screen print that butterfly onto a piece of release paper without a problem, and you might even be able to see the show-through area on the transfer. But when you press the transfer, the ink will expand. And I bet you those butterflies' wings would probably turn solid black in those bottom areas there because they're under the show-through minimum. Now, the word example on the other side here, on the right side, the word example, we're looking at the letter E. Lowercase letter E's are a big culprit of closure because that little hole in the top of a lowercase letter E, that hole needs to be 0.04 inches thick or more. And in this case, we've taken our little gray line, we've put it over that letter E, and we can see that, yep, that gray line is definitely smaller, so that means that the show-through area is bigger than 0.04, so we're good to go. So the whole idea here is you can check these things yourself. Again, the idea is you're drawing yourself a rectangle, whether we're talking about Corel, we're talking about Adobe, you're drawing yourself a rectangle, and then you're sizing it to the show-through area size, which is 0.04, or the printed area we just talked about, 0.012, and you're comparing your artwork, making sure that it's the proper size. Now, when you send your artwork to us, the representatives, they're going to check this also. But if your goal is to send us artwork that's good to go and ready to be used, and you want to send us artwork that is printable, these are the things we're looking for. So let's talk about colors. One of the questions that people ask us is, okay, well, I don't know what your colors are. How do I color my artwork when I send my artwork to you? First of all, we can color your artwork however you want. If you send us vector artwork, then we'll take care of the colors. It doesn't really matter how you send it to us. Just be consistent. If you are going to make your artwork red and blue, use the same blue for everything. Don't color your artwork multiple shades of blue and then tell us, oh, well, all the blue needs to be navy blue. If you color your artwork using all one shade of blue, then it's a lot more clear and easy to understand what your goal is. So try to be consistent. Use all the same shades. So all the blues, one blue, all the reds, one red. Or if you're doing dark blue and light blue, make sure it's consistently. All of the dark blue on my file should be navy. All of the light blue on my file should be Carolina blue. Something like that. So let us know what ink colors will be used where. Now, for example, there are some artists who work, their CorelDRAW or their Adobe workspace is a white screen. So the problem they have is, okay, well, I need to design white artwork. Obviously, they can't design white artwork on a white screen, so they'll design their artwork in a different color. They'll design it in black. They'll design it in bright green. And when you send the artwork to us, you can simply say, hey, all those bright green areas, those are actually white ink. Or all those black areas, those are actually white ink. Now, at Transfer Express, we do stock 75 colors, so we have a ton of colors for you to work with. The colors are easily viewed on the website. Now, keep in mind, if you do look at our colors on the website, those are just digital representations. They're not necessarily going to match 100% when it's been screen printed. If you think about it, this makes sense. Your computer screen is just a computer screen, but when we screen print, we're actually taking buckets of ink. So two different things. But you're welcome to view our stock colors on our website. We also sell our garment printing color selector for $20. It's $20, and you get an actual printed sample of all 75 colors. Now, if you are not using our stock colors, that's totally fine. If you have your own special color that your customer needs, a very special shade of red, that's not a problem. Design your piece of artwork with red, and then tell us when we call you, hey, that red needs to be my special PMS 125C. It's not a problem. We can help you out there. So however you set your colors, just make sure to be consistent and make sure to communicate to us what your intentions are. All of my this is this, all of my that is that, and so forth. So gang sheets. This is another bit of Transfer Express terminology. Gang sheet refers to putting multiple designs on one sheet of paper. Now, you're welcome to create your own gang sheets with us if you send us custom artwork. You are totally welcome to cram as many pieces of art as you want to on one sheet of paper. The paper we work with here at Transfer Express is 11¼ by 14. So whatever you can fit on that one piece of paper, like you see on the far left-hand side here, we've got an example of a gang sheet. This person has crammed a whole bunch of stuff on one sheet of paper. Again, this paper is 11¼ by 14, so if they need an adult size design, but then they also need a heart size, and they need something to go down the sleeve and something to go on the leg, you have room to work with. So this person has laid out their own gang sheet. You're totally welcome to do so. There's a couple things to keep in mind, though. Bear in mind, for example, that we do need there to be ½ an inch between your images. If there's at least ½ an inch between the images, then we can ensure, number one, that you'll be able to cut them, but number two, that you don't have to worry about the ink merging together during the screen printing process and sort of creating a mess. So Half an inch between the images is the best idea. They don't have to all be facing one direction either, keep in mind. Rotate your images. If you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, then play with the images. Rotate them around, turn them 90 degrees, see if you can fit more like that. And they don't all have to be the same image. They can all be different pieces of artwork if you so desire. So gang sheets are definitely a way to save yourself a whole bunch of money because you're paying for that one sheet of paper. You may as well cram as much as you can on there. Now, when you send your artwork to us at Transfer Express, this is something that the representatives are also going to watch out for you. It's always going to be our goal to save you as much money as we can, but if you go into it knowing that you're working on 11 1/4 by 14 sheet of paper, you can sort of plan ahead like that yourself. So you're welcome to set those gang sheets up again. Just make sure you have your workspace set to 11.25 by 14. And it doesn't matter which ways. It doesn't matter if it's portrait or landscape. Either way, we'll rotate the paper to fit your needs. And just make sure you have half an inch of space in between everything that you do. It can take a little bit of time to set up gang sheets. It can be a little painstaking, the trial and error, especially if you have a customer who needs certain sizing. It can take you some time to set it up. But in the end, you save a lot of money, and it's definitely a good thing. So here are the things that we're going to ask you at Transfer Express. When you have made your custom artwork, you've set up your vector art, you've converted it to curves, you've ganged it all together, you even made sure there's enough space between everything, here are the questions we're going to ask you. Now, keep in mind that setting up your artwork for us is super helpful, but there are still things that we need to know to make sure we give you the right type of transfer, or to make sure you're not trying to do something you shouldn't be doing. So we're going to ask you, what type of garment or accessory are you putting it on? Is it cotton? Is it polyester? Is it nylon? As long as you have the garment, you can read off the tag, or if you're purchasing the garment out of a catalog, you can tell us what the catalog says. As long as you can tell us exactly what the manufacturer says the garment is made out of, or the accessory, whatever it may be, then we can point you in the direction of the proper type of transfer. So if you tell us it's going on a nylon bag, we can make sure you get the type of transfer that works on nylon. If you're putting this on a polypropylene, piece of polypropylene, we know, hey, that stuff is really heat sensitive, so we can make sure you get the transfer type that will not melt a polypropylene bag. What color garment is it? Some of the colors that we use at Transfer Express, some of them are a little finicky. Some of the whites and yellows, they don't like to cooperate on the darker colors. So the color of your garment will help us decide which transfer to use. How many colors is it? Screen printed artwork is always going to be based, the price of it's always going to be based on how many colors you're working with. One color artwork will be cheaper than 4 color artwork, let's say. So we're always going to ask you how many colors and what colors they are, of course, and how many do you need. So these are the bits and pieces you'll need to know. So after you've made your artwork, these are the 4 things you have to make sure you have before you send the artwork to us here at Transfer Express. What type of garment, what color garment, how many colors, and how many do you need? All right, so sending us artwork here at Transfer Express, very simple. Sending us artwork is as easy as hitting our website, transferexpress.com. And on our main page, which is what's on my picture here, on our main page, you'll see a brownish reddish button at the top right that says, send us your artwork. Pretty hard to miss. The big brown button, send us your artwork. You're going to click that button, and it's going to bring you to the upload page. Now, instead of just showing you these slides, how about we head on out to transferexpress.com. Here we go. All right, so here we are at transferexpress.com, and we can see we've got the rotating graphic there in the middle. Yep, there we go. It's rotating right now. So we've got our rotating graphic, and then we see down the right-hand side, we see a stack of 3 buttons, and one of them is that brown button that says, send us your artwork. So we're going to go ahead and click that button. And here we see our login page. Now we've got a couple options here. We have, I am a dealer, I am a Transfer Express dealer. This means that you have ordered from us already, that you have a dealer ID and a password. So this is how you would enter the site. I am new to Transfer Express. This is if you've never been here before, your very, very first time sending us artwork, your very, very first time doing this, you would click here. Once you click here, and that's where we're going to go ahead and go, once you click here, you're actually going to get a temporary login information. First, we're going to need to know your company name, your email address, and your phone number. Once you have typed in these pieces of information, you click the button that says Create Temporary Login. We shoot you an email with a temporary password. Once you've gotten that temporary password, we can go back here and we see the last box is, I am not a dealer, I am returning to the upload area. So you would take that temporary password that you received, you'd click on this last option here, and use your email address and your temporary password to log in. Very simple. Now on the flip side of that, like I said, if you are a dealer and you already have your dealer ID and your password, you can click that first box and that's what it asks for, your dealer ID and your password. Very easy. Now I am going to go ahead and use a dealer ID and password to log in here. No, I don't want to save that. Okay, so here's my dealer ID and password. I logged in and I see the upload homepage. From here you can send your artwork to us. Now notice what's happening here is I have two sections. I can see my uploaded files for the last 24 hours and I can see my uploaded files for the last 30 days. So the system is showing me what I've got. If I want to send something new, I simply come up to this blue button that says Upload File. I would click there, answer a couple questions, and boom. That's how to send my artwork. All right, so we're going to pop back into PowerPoint here. So we've been talking about all these ways, all the bits and pieces you need to know to create artwork for us here at Transfer Express. You need to have vector art. That's what we prefer. It needs to be converted to curves. It needs to have the proper line and show through thicknesses. So let's talk about another strategy here. If you joined me last month, then you already heard me mention this, but it's exciting enough that I'm going to mention it again. What if we made it easier for you to create artwork? Now, right now, if you make all that vector artwork, you make all that text converted to curves, you send it to us here at Transfer Express, we make the artwork for you, we print the transfers, we consider that an Easy Prints Plus order. It's a custom order, takes a little bit longer, it's on a little bit more expensive price scale. But what if you could design custom artwork using our stock art? What if you could use our stock artwork to create something fun and exciting? That is what our new EasyView system is going to allow you to do. The improved EasyView system is coming out very soon. We're talking a matter of months at this point. The new EasyView system is going to allow you to move artwork around, add text, add clip arts. You're going to be able to use our bits and pieces to make your own layout and design. You'll be able to enlarge or reduce text and clip arts. You'll be able to make your own gang sheets, and then you'll be able to take that design and see what it will look like on a shirt, on a pair of shorts. You'll be able to see what it looks like on apparel. So you'll essentially be able to take all of our stock artwork, the cheaper easy print pricing artwork, you'll be able to lay it out, do whatever you want yourself, and then get the cheaper easy print pricing. So we're talking a very limited amount of time here. It's going to be coming out very soon. We're in the last couple phases here of testing and making sure all the features and fun stuff are in there. So keep an eye on your email, keep an eye on transferexpress.com. This is going to be the next big thing you're going to hear about with us, and I hope that next time you talk to me, we're even closer to getting this rolled out for everybody. So definitely fun and exciting. Definitely fun and exciting. So, okay. All right, so I'm not sure if we have any time left over for Q&A. Jody, if you're still with us there, do we have time for some Q&A? Do we have any questions that have rolled in?
We absolutely do have some time. Philip would like to know if you have the PMS color match for your colors.
We do. You know what, actually, why don't we go out there and show you where to find that at, shall we? We'll
We
just
shall.
go out to transferexpress.com. Here we go. All right, so Philip, if we're at transferexpress.com here, notice that there's a red toolbar that goes across the top of the screen here. I'm going to bring my mouse down, and I'm not going to click. I'm just going to hover on Heat Applied Transfers. Notice as soon as I did that, a little menu popped up. Then I'm going to come over to Ink Color Chart. It's in the second column here. I'm going to click on Ink Color Chart. So here, and this is the picture I used in the webinar we were just doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my mouse over one of these colors, like for example this blue here, and I see it's mid-blue. I see the CMYK colors. That's a bad example. Here we go. Purple. Purple PMS 267C. So here on the website you can see all of our PMS colors, Vegas Gold 4505C, let's see, we've got Pistachio 360C. You can see all of this on the website, or if you happen to have our price guide, it's a sort of a black and white looking, it's almost like a magazine, comes with our idea book. If you have the price guide also has all of the PMS colors on there too, and then we can certainly match whatever PMS color you'd like us to.
Great. Thanks, Andy. David would like to know on gang sheets, does he have to send multiple pics? And what if he just wants a logo multiple times? Can he send just one pic and request a sheet with 12 on each, for example?
Certainly. Oh, yeah.
What a great question.
We can. That's actually a very good question. If you have just one logo and you're going to want it as a gang sheet, you don't have to gang it yourself, no. Some people do prefer to do that. There are artists out there who like to do their own gang sheets and like to control it themselves, and that's totally fine if you want to make your own gang sheet. Otherwise, if you just have one piece of art, yeah, you upload that piece of artwork to us, and we'll create the gang sheet for you. That's not a problem. And if you do have multiple designs and you have them all as separate art files, you are certainly more than welcome to upload all of those art files to us and tell us when we call you, hey, I want all of these files ganged together. We can take care of that for you too. Again, some people like to control it themselves, but if you'd rather us handle it, not a problem. We can certainly do that.
Okay, great. I think that actually does answer Tamika's and Teresa's question, but if that's not the question they were asking, they asked how can we add different designs on a gang sheet, and also will Transfer Express make a gang sheet for us? So if that's not what they meant, then definitely please type in and clarify. But it sounds like you may have answered 3 questions in one, Andy.
Oh, there you go. Hey.
And John would like to know if all the images have to have the same color palette on the gang sheet, or can some images have less or more colors than others on the same gang sheet?
You know what, John, that's actually a good question. Here's what makes that complicated. The short answer is no. They don't all have to have the same color palette at all. But let's just say, for example, let's say you have 3 pieces of artwork. One of them is black, one of them is white, one of them is red. And you put those 3 pieces of art on the same gang sheet. So you've got the black image, the white image, the red image. That gang sheet is now a 3-color gang sheet, black, white, and red. So what happens is the representative will take the time to see how much a 3-color order would cost you. Then we do some math, and we see if it's cheaper for you to do those as 3 separate 1-color orders. So the answer, John, is no, they don't all have to share the same color palette, but depending on the price, it might be better to do them separately. We'll always help you out with that.
Okay, great. And David would like to know, once he has an order, is that file saved for future prints to be ordered, or does he have to continue sending it in again and again?
Oh, good question. No, we do save these for quite a long time. You know what? I'm not sure off the top of my head the official time period we put on that. I believe we say we'll officially save it for a year or so, but we have artwork that goes back since before I started working here. So,
right,
which is longer than I care to admit. So, no, we definitely save your artwork, so you don't have to worry about that. My advice for you there is when you get an order from us, it has a packing slip, and on the packing slip is an order number. It always starts with a letter. For example, this year all of the orders start with the letter K. So save your order number, because that's how to reference your artwork in the future.
Perfect. And Susan would like to know, how does the process differ for the express print process? And I'm assuming by express print she means the digital in order to order CAD prints.
Okay, CAD prints are apples and oranges here. We could have a totally separate webinar on how to do artwork for CAD prints, I think.
Yes, you could.
I'm going to assume that we're talking about gang sheeting. If we're talking about gang sheeting, then no, we don't gang sheet for CAD prints. CAD prints are always done individual images because if you think about it, it makes sense. Screen printing is done on sheets of paper. A CAD print is created on a rolled good, so there really aren't sheets of paper to do gang sheets on. So CAD prints are done individually. Artwork, you can sort of apply the same logic. We prefer vector artwork, but when it becomes a CAD print order, it actually doesn't really matter quite so much if it's vector or bitmap, as long as you have a really high quality bitmap. We prefer your resolution to be 200 or higher, and we prefer your color mode to be set to CMYK. So that's your quick and dirty answer.
Yes. And Susan, or for anybody else interested, we did actually, Great Garment Graphics just hosted a webinar earlier this week on Tuesday, which will be posted tomorrow, reviewing the artwork guidelines, not so much for Transfer Express for digital printing, but for Stahls ID Direct, but essentially they're the same. And actually the pricing is the same too, Andy, so...
Yeah.
So those at least would be good guidelines to follow for either place that you're going to send your artwork to.
Definitely.
So it looks like that's it that's the last of the question. Oh, wait, we have one more from David. He would like to know if there's a way he could get the info written for saving to print that you just mentioned.
My advice would be this webinar is going to be posted, both a recording and a PDF version of these slides are going to be available at Great Garment Graphics. Those are going to go up tomorrow, Jody, I think, right?
Yes.
So I would visit greatgarmentgraphics.com, and you'll be able to, if you hit the blog section, there's going to be a blog post called Webinar Wrap-Up, and you'll be able to download a PDF of the slides right from there. So much easier and nice format. So.
And if I'm not mistaken, when I was researching for the webinar earlier this week, I think you guys have a really nice PDF of all of your artwork guidelines. I remember seeing that thinking, oh my gosh, what a great resource this is. Right on your website, that it has, I mean, everything you need to know in order to sort of submit artwork kind of in one handy little PDF.
You're correct. You're correct. If you go to TransferExpress.com, the Help and Education section has a whole bunch of PDFs along those lines about artwork and about, just about anything else you can imagine. So yeah, we've got that there too. Yeah.
Yep, and so I will actually include that in the post-webinar blog, a link to that, and then that way whoever reads it can link right to that and print out the PDF just for references that you can have on hand for you and others at your business.
Sounds good. Well, if that's the last question, Jody?
I believe it is.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We will be back with you. I will be back with you from Transfer Express here on November 7th talking about warming up winter sales. That'll be a fun one. But before that, we've got Imprintables Warehouse joining us on October 22nd for No Digitizer on Hand, no problem. So thank you everybody for coming out today. Please sign up for the next webinar. I look forward to talking to you again then, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
And Andy, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us today. It's a great webinar, and each of you out there in the audience, have a great day as well.